This is the Honda CB1000R. This thing is the modern iteration of the gentleman's Hypernaked. It'll get you where you want to go in a flash, and it's not going to spill your tea while it does it.
Yes! Good. Now, flourish the pinky.
And this is the Yamaha MT10, one of the cheapest ways to live that Ricky Bobby dream.
To anyone out there who wants to go fast, anybody. I want to go fast.
The question is, which one is better? Now we're going to start this little head-to-head by looking at the Yamaha MT10. This thing right here is one of the most iconic motorcycles for both a good and a bad reason. On the plus side, this thing has Yamaha's inline 4 CP4 motor that comes out of the R1. This thing puts down 160 horsepower and 82 foot-pounds of torque while weighing in at 460-ish pounds wet and ready to ride. That's not all it inherits from the R1. It's got a twin spar frame, an overbuilt swing arm, and some phenomenal suspension. But this thing has a problem unique to the MT10, and that is this is the butt ugliest motorcycle you could ever lay your eyes on. Sure, this thing goes like a stabbed rat, but everybody's looking at you for all the wrong reasons, because this thing, it's, to call it polarizing is to say that KTM is in a good place right now. I also do find it interesting that we've got a Brembo rear brake master cylinder, a Nissan rear brake, and then up here, this is just a Yamaha, like unbranded one. Yeah, that's definitely just Yamaha. And then this is Advios, A-D-V-I-O-S, Advios, like adios, but with a V. This bike right here is listed on AF1's website for $8,200, which means you're looking at probably $9,200 to $9,400 out the door, which is exactly what I paid for the CB1000. However, while they are the same price, this bike feels a lot less premium. Just look at the cockpit. This cockpit is super last generation. It feels like an MT07. But then again, brand new, these things were $13,000. While the Yamaha has a lot more flash, this thing carries itself with a little bit more professional of an attitude, shall we say. It's putting down a little bit less power, making only 143 horsepower, which is a weird statement to say, and 77 foot-pounds of torque out of a 1000cc motor, and it weighs in at 467 pounds wet and ready to ride. This thing on the side of the road has a lot more going for it than the MT10. First of all, you don't have to wear a bag over your head while you're riding this thing down the road. From just about any angle, this bike looks really good. The red on this bike is really flashy, but not in a, hey, cops come chase me kind of way, just in a, hey, that bike looks really sick kind of way. The single round headlight doesn't look like it came right out of a Michael Bay movie either. Another thing the CB has going for it is it doesn't feel like a cheap motorcycle. It ships at $13,000, which is the same price that an MT10 goes for, and even still, this thing feels much more pulled together. Looking down in the cockpit, the wires and the cables are hidden. The dashboard, even though it's an LCD, looks a lot nicer. Not to mention, there's a lot less plastic on this motorcycle. The whole tank is a nice metal thing instead of some plastic tank cover. However, out of the factory, this thing doesn't have the same level of technology that the Yamaha does. It does not come with cruise control, and it does not have a quick shifter, but it does have a full suite of rider aids, including rider modes, TC, wheelie control, ABS, all that good stuff. Oh, and the best thing that this motorcycle has going for it is that it is a giveaway motorcycle. That is correct. You could win this thing right here. This lovable CB1000R is up for grabs until February 27th. All you have to do is click the link down in the description below to get yourself entered to win this bad boy right here. It's a phenomenal way for you guys to support the channel if you're not into the whole Patreon thing, and this motorcycle right here could show up in your driveway. While I'm doing shoutouts, I also want to take a second to shout out Quadlock, who for the second time in a row has sent me a whole bunch of goodies for me to pop on the giveaway bikes. This bike is fitted with their wireless charger, an all aluminum pro handlebar mount, along with their vibration dampener. I've tested all the different handlebar mounts and cases for your bike, and Quadlock makes the best one to keep your phone safe both on the bike and when it hits the ground. They also have a massive suite of accessories to complete your perfect setup. Click that link down in the description below to check out everything they have to offer, and a huge shout out to Quadlock for supporting the channel. Now we're gonna get out on the road on the MT10 first and see how that thing shakes down. And then we're gonna hop on the CB1000 to see how they feel back to back. That right there is one of the greatest sounds to ever come out of a motorcycle. It is one of the most aggressive, just angry exhaust notes. The only thing better, in my opinion, is the Aprilia V4. However, as we're getting rolling here, one thing I am gonna knock the MT10 for is the snatchiest throttle I have ridden in a long time. This is a incredibly snatchy throttle. I don't know if this is the stock map, because this does have an exhaust on it, or if this is a flash or what, but man alive, is this an aggressive throttle map. I actually have preferred riding it in mode 2 versus mode 1, which is the full power mode. I'll drop it into full power and I'll show you what I'm talking about. But as we go around this corner, I can just sort of feed in the throttle nice and easy. And even if I get a little bit, you know, silly with opening the throttle up, it's just it's a hair delayed. There's just a momentary delay before it just is like, arms come out of the sockets. So let's drop it into 1. And man, already I can just feel the difference. We'll do the exact same thing. It's so aggressive in the first throttle map. It actually does make this bike quite difficult to ride. It's been a minute since I've ridden an MT10. The last time I rode it was, I think it was a couple of years ago. But that bike, I don't know what it was, but I don't remember it feeling this just gnarly. Something about the power delivery here is just more than I remember. And it's not simply that I haven't ridden big bikes in a hot minute. I mean, I've got my Tuono, which is 140 horse. I've been goofing around on the CB, which is 140 horse. And then I was goofing around the other day on a Tuono V4, which is 175. So I'm used to having some power, but I don't know. This is the amount of power and the way it's delivered on this motorcycle makes it slightly difficult to ride. You really do feel like this thing has the beating heart of an R1 in it. And that brings with it some good and some bad. So let's dive in with the good stuff. The suspension, the chassis, everything about this bike is so composed. Like, this is a twin spar frame. It is a much beefier frame than what we find in the CB. And you feel the difference. On the side of the tire, you absolutely feel the difference. If the engine, if we take the engine out of the equation and we're just coasting through a corner, this bike feels more composed. The brakes, they're not as sharp as what's on the CB, but they're very good for the no-name Yamaha house calipers, and they're well paired with the power on this bike. It feels nice. If it were me, I would upgrade the master cylinder on this. Something about the feel through the lever just doesn't feel great. I feel like if you upgrade from what looks like a bargain bin master cylinder to something like what's on the R1, or you know, maybe a Brembo MCS13 or something like that, you'd have a massive improvement on this motorcycle. Another thing, I'm sitting very upright. This is me completely straight, and this is me grabbing the bars with straight arms. Like, there's almost no difference. This bike's seating position is super upright. It feels almost supermoto-esque. which is in keeping with the MT brand of motorcycles. MT07, MT09, even MT03 are very, very upright motorcycles. That's nice on the highway because, you know, my head is outside of all of the wind buffeting that's coming off the dashboard and the mirrors and all that. But when you start picking up the pace and you start leaning forward, it feels a little bit unnatural somehow. You could tell that the bike wants you sitting here. Man, I'm going to drop it into mode 2. I just feel more confident in mode 2. The power delivery is much smoother and a little bit more lazy in mode 2, but there's a little bit more dead zone between pulling the throttle and it giving you initial bite. So, you know, obviously you have the throttle free play, but then you get on neutral throttle and you start to pull, it accelerates a lot less aggressively in mode 2, but you still have a lot of power. It's not like it's making less power, it's just altering the throttle map. This bike also is fitted with a quick shifter from the factory. Is it the best quick shifter I've ever felt? Nah, but it works great. You know, it's quick and it shifts. Nice job, Yamaha. No blipper though. You have to manually manage your downshifts, and I think that's actually to a lot of people's taste. A lot of folks that I hear in the comments are like, yeah, I like having a quick shifter, don't get me wrong, but I also really like being able to do my throttle blipping myself, or I like clutchless shifting. But now let's bring in some of the stuff that I'm not loving about here. We've already talked about the throttle, and we did mention this on the side of the road here, but this bike feels cheap. Like, looking down in this dashboard, this does not feel like a premium riding experience. It looks like an MT07. I'm not gonna lie. The LCD dash looks horrible. I'm just gonna say that. It looks horrible. I know that this is the previous gen MT10, and the new ones have a TFT dash. Even that one, it's okay. But this is abysmal. The seat is also rock hard. I've been on this bike for like an hour, and my tailbone is already hating me. However, I cannot deny the character of this motor. It's hard to find a more characterful inline 4, other than maybe like the Hayabusa. Something about like the Gen 1 Hayabusa is so cool. But of the modern motorcycles, this is the best inline 4 I've ever ridden. It is ludicrously aggressive, but the sound, you can't beat that, man. You really can't. But let's hop on the CB and see how they feel back to back. I don't think anybody could realistically make the argument that the CB1000R sounds better, quote unquote. It just sounds like a normal inline 4. That might be more to your taste, but I feel like in terms of standing out from a crowd, the MT10 does that more. This, especially considering the fact that it has a stock exhaust on it, it definitely just zings up like a normal inline 4. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but again, it doesn't stand out from a crowd. But what you do notice the second you hop on this motorcycle is how much nicer it feels right out of the box than the MT10. Don't get me wrong, the MT10 is a good bike, but it just doesn't feel premium, and it doesn't look premium when you're sitting on it. I returned it to the folks at AF1, and the guy I was talking to made the joke that it looks like you're back in the 1980s with that dashboard, and it really does look cheap. And this one isn't significantly better. Like, it's still just an LCD dash, but something about it just feels nicer. It feels less like something you'd see on a calculator. Not to mention all the wires and tubes and lines are hidden a little bit better. This is an electronic throttle, so you don't have a bunch of throttle cables sticking out. The cockpit is just a lot cleaner. It doesn't look cleaner because I got a whole bunch of stuff, all my filming gear on it, but it is a cleaner cockpit. However, you have to just acknowledge the fact that this is the slower motorcycle between the two. Riding these back to back, it's very clear that this is down at least 20 horsepower on the MT10. You feel it. However, the torque figures aren't significantly different, right? The MT10 is in the mid 80s and this is in the high 70s. I feel like you're less likely to notice a percentage difference in the torque because it's just not that far apart. Whereas the horsepower numbers are a lot more disparate. I would also point out the fact that I'm not a good enough rider to, on the street, be able to take advantage of 160 horsepower. I'm barely capable of wrangling 140. So this bike feels like I can use a little bit more of it. I can let it eat just a little bit more. The power's more accessible here. There is less of it, for sure. There's less of it. And the way that the throttle is tuned, it's a lot less abrupt, right? On the MT10, I was able to just whack the throttle open and have it kind of jump away from me. This doesn't really do that. It's a lot more smooth on-off. I'd actually reckon a lot of that is down to the way that the normal firing order on a inline 4 makes power versus the crossplane. It just feels a little bit more linear and predictable. But again, it is slower. One big black eye for this bike versus the MT10, though, has to be the cornering. I feel like this bike, you're going to hit the limits of its cornering potential a lot sooner. Because when you look at the construction of the frames, this frame is definitely last gen. It's not a twin spar superbike frame like what you have on the MT10. That's not to say that this bike can't corner or that it feels funny in a corner, because it doesn't. But I feel like were I to be pushing both of these bikes on a racetrack, I'd be more comfortable on the MT10. You know what I mean? And so when it comes to the actual determination, which bike is better, I feel like the question is, what kind of rider are you? Right? Are you looking for a bike that can do everything? If that's the case, I feel like you'd probably end up being happier on the CB1000 versus somebody who really just wants nothing but a pure sporting experience. And you, especially if you're okay to overlook a lot of looks, and probably some weird looks from other people around you, because God almighty is that bike ugly. The MT10 is going to be more for you. It's not to say that this bike won't pick the front wheel up occasionally, because it definitely wanted to do that right there. That was fun. But I don't think that the rider of an MT10 and the rider of a CB1000R are the same people. I do wish that this had a quick shifter like the MT10. I do wish that it came with cruise control from the factory like the MT10. But I'm willing to overlook the quick shifter. I'm less willing to overlook the cruise control, but I was able to put one on here. So, you know, you win some, you lose some. If you're looking for my opinion between these two bikes, I'm actually having more fun on the CB. And I never thought I'd say that. But riding the MT10 felt almost too much. This feels like exactly the riding experience that I'd want 140 horsepower to feel like. Predictable, easy to live with, and super controllable. It's very Honda. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Let me know what bike you would prefer. Are you willing to overlook the ugly factor of the MT10 for a bike that is just so aggressively good at going fast? Or are you willing to have like a 7 or 8 out of 10 at everything motorcycle that looks nice and feels better in the hand or under the butt with the CB1000R? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and while you're down there, don't forget to get yourself entered to win this motorcycle. We've got a couple of weeks left to get entered, and I think the last time I looked, we were at like 100-ish entries. So you've got a pretty good shot at getting yourself this thing showing right up at your garage. One thing I will say, right here at the end, both of these motorcycles drink gas like crazy. The MT10 is thirstier, but this thing is a thirsty piggy too. Basically, every time I ride this thing, I gotta go to the gas station. So, I guess you can't have this much horsepower and have decent fuel economy. So, pick one. Catch you guys in the next one. See you later.